Today we're looking at the introduction to Unit 1, A Gathering of Voices. Of course, this is in our textbook in Volume 1, pages 1 through 15, Beginnings of American Literature to 1800. So quite a wide span of time there, but we'll be covering basic writers and texts from this particular period. All right, the major voices in Unit 1, we have the American Indians, their origin myths and oral histories. We have the European settlers, of course, from the Spanish and English, the French. We have the explorer narratives. We have religious writings, political documents as well. You'll recognize many of them very famous in American literature. We'll also look more deeply at slave narratives, and we'll read a short story by a modern-day Ojibwe descendant living in Chicago, Susan Power. Third up is the historical background. Our first Americans, the natives, of course. There were thousands of tribes. You know many of the names. Diseases, unfortunately, from Europe. The immune systems of the natives couldn't handle the diseases, and many natives died due to the contact with the settlers, the explorers. We'll also look at the Puritans, the Pilgrims, the Planters. Of course, these are the Europeans. Very famously, Cotton Mather, one of the great early families of writers in America. The Mathers coined the term city on a hill. And we'll look particularly at Southern plantation writing, John Smith in particular, and others. And lastly, the birth of the nation. So we'll see the Revolutionary period with the founding fathers and the writings there, including the Declaration of Independence. We have an essential question that we hold on to and examine all throughout the year. What is the relationship between literature and place? So we'll see the young America coming through the literature of the early American writers. To Native Americans, people belong to the land. So you've probably studied in your earlier academic careers, you've studied the natives and how they honored nature, how they continue to honor nature and make it a part of their community. We'll look at that as we look at their origins and legends, origin myths and legends, and then also we'll see the colonists and their view of nature. The land belongs to the people. So nature becomes a commodity, something to be used to help us progress. Now, these attitudes about nature are strewn throughout the readings we'll do, really throughout the year. So again, the myths and legends are idealized view of rivers, animals, gods, and humans' relationship to those things. They live, again, in this harmony of nature. The settlers saw wilderness as evil. We'll see that in the Scarlet Letter particularly. So nature is a realistic, practical entity used for its resources. And lastly, we have a number of names and key terms here. The Mooks is the first one. We'll talk about that with the Iroquois Constitution. But the Mook stands for the Mohicans, Onondaga, Oneida, Cayuga, and Seneca. Those tribes form these 5 nations of the Iroquois Constitution. Again, we'll study the wilderness and its role in shaping American literature. One of my favorite topics is anglicizing words, so native words that are incorporated into our American language. Individualism, we'll see the self-reliance come later as we get to Emerson, Thoreau. Puritanism, certainly still influential today. The Enlightenment, also known as the Age of Reason, very important in the development of our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence. Perhaps the most important document of the Revolutionary period is Common Sense, that helped to thrust the American public into the consciousness of the Revolutionary War. few more. William Bradford, leader of the Pilgrims. Phyllis Wheatley, first published American poet. Decanawida, the leader of the Iroquois Constitution. Of course, you all know Thomas Jefferson, the Declaration of Independence. Lauda Equiano, this first slave narrative, had a great impact on our culture. And lastly, of course, my great-great-great-great-grandfather, Benjamin Franklin. If you have that wrinkle down the middle of your forehead, you too might be related to Ben Franklin, like 40 million other people. All right, so that wraps up the introduction. We'll get to the activities in class.